Welcome back to the Cannes Film Festival 2023 Parallel Challenge here on Fantasy Film Ball. We are your hosts, Matt and Arnaud.
And that means we are watching an equivalent film to all 21 competition films at Cannes this year. So in this video, we'll talk about Caro Diario and A Brighter Tomorrow by Nanni Moretti.
Before we get into these films, let's talk about Moretti. Now, Nanni Moretti has been making films since the mid-1970s. He made his first feature film at the age of 23, and his second film, Ecce Bombo, which he made when he was only 25 years old, played in competition at Cannes, which is incredible for a second feature, much less a feature made when you were 25 years old. That puts him in, like, Xavier Dolan territory, basically. He became very, very well known within Italy, but his films have rarely broken out with an international audience beyond film festivals. His international peak was in 2001 when his movie The Sun's Room won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. He often acts in his own films, which usually have a very wry sense of humor, a bit of a political stance.
Caro Diario, or Dear Diary in English, is a film that is separated in 3 stories, all told from the point of view of its writer, director, star, who plays himself. The first story is Vespa, so Moretti rides around Rome and appreciates the architecture. He also goes to watch movies and learns about Pasolini's death. The second story is Islands. Moretti goes to various Italian islands and learns that each of them have their own kind of weird way of identifying themselves, and he goes on these little adventures with a buddy. And then Doctor, the last one, Moretti recounts the story of how he learned about his Hodgkin lymphoma diagnosis.
I mean, I think each story is good for different reasons, and I'd say I like a different aspect of each of the stories. I'd say that Vespa, the first one, is the most beautifully shot of the 3, the most creatively designed in terms of how it is shot. It's so Italian watching Nanni Moretti riding around on a Vespa. Islands, I think, was the funniest, the most creative, with the character arc of his friend going from having these monologues about how TV will rot your brain and to being a television addict. And Doctor, the final story, was definitely the most formally creative with how it interwove narration into the scenes, with how it would cut to shots of Moretti looking directly into the camera and narrating for us, and then intercut the next shot with him being off-screen narrating still. Very, very creative in how that was designed and put together.
I gotta say, man, I had such a good time with this film. Caro Diario has Moretti dancing on his Vespa to Didi by Khaled while observing the beauty of Rome's architecture. That checks all my boxes. This to me is such a fun, relatively humble and smart way of making autofiction. One that isn't interested in trying to self-pity more so that it is interested in trying to recreate certain events the way you would kind of free form them on your diary writing them. I love how the form changes between these 3 stories. You can see this through the music choices, for example, in that the first chapter is kind of a collection of songs that like a soundtrack. The second chapter is scored, and the third chapter is entirely silent until the very end, where you have a very distinct Italian song. So you have all these different soundscapes throughout the 3 different stories.
I liked the film. I didn't love it. I thought it was entertaining. It passed the time really well, but I didn't fall head over heels for this movie the same way that you did. I know that you typically really don't like these kinds of autobiographical films, as they tend to feel vain or narcissistic, and I definitely wouldn't call this film outright narcissistic, but it did feel a bit vain in insisting that these entries from Moretti's diary warrant a film. I'd say really only one of the 3 stories really feels like it is necessary to be a film, which is the final one where he's talking about his cancer diagnosis. But that said, it's never trying to glorify him or aggrandize him as a person. He's just a really ordinary, geeky guy that likes movies and his Vespa. But still, there's part of it that feels a bit vain, and maybe it's the fact that he plays himself directly. We still have people coming up on screen saying, "Oh my god, Nanni Moretti, I'm such a huge fan of yours. I love your films." And part of that kind of feels a little bit self-aggrandizing. So I guess I'm just wondering why specifically this piece of autofiction works for you when, like, you had problems with The Fabelmans for being too self-aggrandizing for Steven Spielberg.
I was really fascinated by the exercise in autofiction that Moretti is doing here. If we can't tell our own stories with ourselves in the character the way we can in books, then I feel like we're limiting ourselves a little bit to cinema. And while, yes, there are, maybe a few moments like when he goes to the dermatologist and of course he says, oh, big fan, whatever. Yeah, those things happen, I'm sure they happen to Moretti, and so he feels a little bit compelled to mention them because it is part of his experience. I'd never feel like he indulges in them, and I never feel like he is making this film to put himself on the pedestal and to humbly, quote unquote, denigrate himself either. I think he really is just making this film to kind of show some of his experiences. Specifically, the third story feels like the kind of thing that a friend would tell you, oh, this crazy thing happened to me yesterday, and I have to tell you about this. It gives me that vibe, and I thought that sincerity really, really touched me. Very funny, very moving, very stylistically ambitious, but never alienating, very accessible. This is a gem. I'm surprised not more people are talking about it. This won Best Director at Cannes the same year that Pulp Fiction won the Palme d'Or, so I guess that overshadowed it.
I mean, I definitely didn't love this one as much. It was very solid, it was very sweet, but it reminded me of a lot of the other Moretti films that I've seen where I watch it, I go, that was fun, and then I kind of move forward. And it is interesting that Moretti is such a political filmmaker, because I don't feel like, even though his politics do inform his characters, I don't think they actually inform the weight of the films, because his films are quite frivolous entertainment, and they're very sweet and very fun, but not much more than that.
It seems that Caro Diario might have been a really good choice for a parallel to this year's Nanni Moretti film, A Brighter Tomorrow, because the poster for Brighter Tomorrow very much mimics or mirrors the poster for Caro Diario, where we see kind of a simple illustration of Nanni Moretti on his Vespa scooter. Here in this new one, we see the same kind of art style, but he is on an electric scooter. It seems to be another kind of slice of life following characters from the Italian film scene. Of course, Nanni Moretti plays the lead. This film, notably, has already been released in Italy. It's fairly rare that in-competition titles have this path where they are originally released in their home country and then only have an international premiere at Cannes. The last time a film did that was Pain and Glory 4 years ago. Anyways, this doesn't seem like a major work. Maybe a step up from Tre Piani based on the reviews that we've already seen come out for it, but maybe not a masterpiece either. Moretti hasn't won a prize at Cannes since his Palme d'Or in 2001, so I say this is not going to be an exception.
We are not going to see this win awards, but that doesn't mean it won't be a lovely little film to watch. It seems like it could be very enjoyable. But that brings us to the end of today's video for the Cannes Parallel Challenge. Make sure that you subscribe so that you can stay up to date with all of our Cannes Film Festival content that we are releasing this week, and make sure you come back because we're going to be releasing our prize list video for all of these films at Cannes. Make sure you track down some of these films to watch because we picked some good ones this year. And as always, thank you so much for watching.